Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Good to be back.
So last time we really dug into how French didn't just, sprinkle words onto English.
Right. It got right into the grammar, fundamentally changed things, deep structural stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is, well, the perfect setup for today.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're taking that really complex relationship, that deep French imprint, and asking the big question. How did English, after centuries where French clearly had the upper hand, end up as the world language?
Yeah, it's quite a story, a real millennium-long wrestle for dominance, you could say. It tracks pretty closely with the power shifts between England and France.
And we've got a whole stack of material here tracing that journey.
We do. Lots to unpack.
So our mission today, unpack those key moments. The history, the power shifts, the cultural tides, maybe even some historical accidents that pushed English forward, often, right alongside, or even sometimes benefiting from its old rival French.
Okay, let's dive in.
Right. Where do we start? Setting the scene.
Yeah, let's kick things off there. England and France, geographically, they're incredibly close. Just the channel between them.
Always interacting.
Exactly. So their histories, their cultures, they've always been tangled up. And that naturally shows up in the languages. Big time.
Right. And like we said last time, even though they come from different families, English is Germanic, French is Romance from Latin. French had the biggest impact on English. Way more than any other language, even other Germanic ones. It's kind of wild.
It really is. And it highlights something key about English, maybe something that helped it later on. Its willingness, its ability to just soak up foreign words and even structures. It's very porous in a way.
But it wasn't just armies forcing words on people, was it? The sources stress the cultural angle, too.
Yeah.
Early on, French culture was seen as, well, pretty advanced.
Oh, yeah. Philosophy, art, literature, law, education. There is a definite prestige factor. People admired it, wanted to imitate it.
Even before 1066.
Absolutely. You had royal marriages linking the courts. Edward the Confessor, remember, grew up in Normandy. He brought French speakers into his government before the conquest.
Ah, okay. That's where things like castle replacing the Old English burg come in.
Exactly. Little hints of what was to come. But then, the main event, 1066.
The Norman Conquest. Can't overstate that one.
No way! William of Normandy invades, Battle of Hastings, Harold Godwinson is out, William is crowned. The Bayeux Tapestry lays it all out visually. It's a seismic shift, like you said.
And the political fallout was immediate for, what, over 300 years?
Until 1399, yeah. The kings of England spoke French, the whole ruling class, almost entirely Norman French outsiders.
Wow. Just imagine that. The conqueror's language becomes the language of power. Overnight, almost?
Pretty much. Norman French takes over government, law, the courts, the military, education. Latin sticks around for the church and scholarship.
And English?
English gets pushed down. It becomes the language of the common folk, the peasantry, rural areas, seen as crude, rough, not for polite society or official business. Its status, especially written English, was genuinely threatened.
So you get this clear linguistic hierarchy. Speaking French isn't just useful, it's aspirational.
Definitely. It's a status symbol. People started deliberately using French words to sound, sophisticated, educated.
And this is where all those loanwords flood in, right? Especially in areas the Normans controlled or things they introduced.
Precisely. Look at food and cooking. English food was apparently simpler before. The Normans brought more refined cuisine. That word itself is French.
Right. And boil, fry, roast, grill, mince sauce, all French.
And that classic example that just drives the social point home, the animal names versus the meat.
Oh, yeah. Love this one. The English-speaking peasants are raising the animals.
So we keep the old English words, swine, ox, calf, sheep, deer.
But the Norman lords are eating the final product.
So the words for the meat on the table are French, pork, beef, veal, mutton, venison. It's like a little linguistic fossil of the social structure.
Tells the whole story, doesn't it?
And it wasn't just food. Law and government. Huge influx there, too.
Are massive. Think sue, plead, accuse, indict, arrest, property, estate, parliament, treaty, sovereign, mayor, on and on. It reflects who was running the show.
And nobility titles, duke, duchess, marquis, baron.
Yep, all French except the older earl. Military terms, too. Army, navy, peace, enemy, battle, siege, captain, sergeant.
Even everyday civilized stuff. Fashion, dress, robe, jewel, curtain, chair, towel.
It shows it wasn't just about force. French had cultural cachet. People wanted to use these words. They stuck because they were associated with a higher status.
So French is firmly in the driver's seat in England for centuries, its status tied to the relationship between the countries. But things change, that relationship gets tense.
Very tense. And often it's the big crises that force the big shifts. Enter the 100 Years' War, 1337 to 1453. A long conflict.
Brutally long. And it did more than just decide thrones. It really hammered out a distinct English identity separate from France. And part of that was growing hostility towards France, and by extension, towards the French language still used by the English elite.
Yeah, speaking the enemy's language probably didn't feel right anymore.
Exactly. So the war definitely sped up French's decline in England. You start seeing English pop up in official places again.
The sources mention specific dates, right? Yeah. Like 1362, English used in Parliament, French stopped in the law courts.
And by 1489, French is completely gone from Parliament. English is back as the official language.
But wasn't there something else devastating happening around the same time? Something even bigger than the war?
The Black Death hit England hard starting around 1349. Horrific pandemic.
And that had a linguistic impact. How?
Oh, it killed indiscriminately, but it disproportionately hit the denser populations and, crucially, the educated elite, the clergy, teachers, lawyers, the people who were the main users of Latin and French.
So it created a vacuum at the top.
A massive vacuum. Suddenly, the common laborers, the English speakers, were much more valuable because there were fewer people overall. Their economic importance rose, and so did the status and necessity of their language, English.
Wow. So war pushes out French from above, plague boosts English from below. A perfect storm, linguistically speaking.
Pretty much. And all this is happening just as English itself starts to get standardized.
Right, the language itself is changing, the great vowel shift.
Yeah, that's kicking off around this time, mid-14th century onwards for a few hundred years. Huge changes in how long vowels were pronounced. It made English sound quite different from French and other continental languages. Still debated why it happened, but maybe linked to social mixing after the plague, urbanization.
And key figures emerged too. Chaucer.
Geoffrey Chaucer, exactly. Father of English poetry. Hugely important. He knew French, Italian, Latin, the languages of high culture.
But he chose English for the Canterbury Tales.
Deliberately chose Middle English, the London dialect. That was a massive statement. It showed English could be a language of great literature, just like French or Latin. It elevated the whole status of the vernacular, like Dante did for Italian.
And he introduced a ton of words, too, apparently.
Yeah, first recorded use of many words, drawing from French and Latin, but embedding them in English. Words like acceptable, alkali, army.
Okay, so literature helps. What about the government side?
That's where the Chancery Standard comes in, around the 1430s. This was the written style used by the government clerks in London, the Chancery, based on the East Midland dialect, but with French and Latin influences baked in. It became a model for formal written English. Consistency starts creeping in.
And then technology lends a hand. William Caxton.
Great. The first English printer brings the printing press over from the continent, sets up shop in Westminster in 1476.
That must have been huge for standardization.
Oh, absolutely a game changer. Printers needed consistency. Spelling, grammar. It had to be predictable to print efficiently. They had to pick a dialect, and often they chose something close to that Chancery Standard London English.
So print helps spread that version of English.
Exactly. It helps fix the language in a more stable form. Caxton printed Chaucer, Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur. He even did a French-English vocabulary book, interestingly enough. Still needed.
So you've got war, plague, literature, government standards, and printing all pushing English forward in England after centuries of French dominance there.
It's a remarkable comeback story for the language within its own homeland.
But French wasn't exactly gone from the scene, was it? Even after it declined in England.
Not at all. Far from it. Across Europe, French cultural influence actually hit its peak in the 17th and 18th centuries. This is often called the last big wave of French borrowing into English.
The era of Louis XIV, the Sun King, and then the Enlightenment.
Exactly. French became the undisputed language of European courts, diplomacy, science, philosophy. It totally replaced Latin in that international role for a good while. French salons, Molière, Rousseau, Voltaire. French was high culture.
And England felt that pull, too.
Oh, yes. Charles II, after the Restoration, loved French culture. He'd spent time in exile there. So you see another wave of French words coming into English, especially for arts, fashion, society, sophisticated living.
Like ballet, boulevard, coiffure, routine, naïve, chagrin, confidant, rendezvous.
Those kinds of words. And sometimes English speakers kept the French spelling or pronunciation deliberately, as a marker of sophistication, showing off a bit.
Okay, so culturally, French is still hugely powerful in Europe, but politically, militarily, the ground is shifting under its feet.
Dramatically. While France is the cultural center, Britain is quietly, then not so quietly, building a global empire. Economic power, naval power, colonial expansion.
And this leads to direct conflict, right? The big one being the 7 Years' War.
That's the one. 1756 to 1763, a truly global conflict between Britain and France fought in Europe, North America, India.
And Britain won.
Decisively. The consequences were massive. France lost most of its North American colonies, Canada, basically, and its influence in India was severely curtailed. Britain became the dominant global power.
The empire on which the sun never sets.
That's the phrase. And there's a direct line from that victory, that global dominance, to the spread of English. British trade, British administration, British settlers. They took the English language with them all over the world. It moved far beyond Europe.
Okay, so British power seeds English globally, which takes us into the 20th century, and a new player emerges.
The United States, rising to become a global superpower itself.
With its roots in Britain, speaking English, but with its own complicated history involving France.
Exactly. And the sheer economic, political, and later cultural power of the U.S. in the 20th century just cemented English's position. It went from being a major international language to being the dominant one.
And there are symbolic moments, like English replacing French as the main language of diplomacy after World War II.
And the UN headquarters ending up in New York. That sent a message too, intentionally or not. English was central.
Now, this is where that ironic twist you mentioned comes in, right? With France and America.
It's fascinating. Throughout history, France's big rival was Britain, so France often took actions to try and weaken Britain.
Makes sense.
But some of those actions ended up helping Britain's other major rival, the United States, the very country that would ultimately propel English to global dominance over French.
Okay, give us the examples. The American Revolution.
France threw its support behind the American colonists fighting Britain. Money, troops, naval support. A direct blow against Britain. But it helped establish the U.S.
Right. And then the Louisiana Purchase.
1803. Napoleon needs cash for his wars in Europe, maybe wants to complicate things for Britain in North America, sells a vast swath of land to the U.S. Doubles the size of the country, strengthens it immensely. Again, an anti-British move that boosts America.
And the Statue of Liberty.
A gift from France to the U.S., symbolizing their alliance against Britain during the Revolution. It's literally a monument to France, helping the future powerhouse of the English language.
The irony is just, wow. France tries to kneecap Britain, ends up strengthening the nation that carries English to global victory.
It's a perfect example of unintended consequences in history. France's strategic moves against Britain inadvertently fueled the rise of the nation that would ensure English, not French, became the world's lingua franca.
So, looking back at this whole millennium, it really was a language struggle, wasn't it? Mirroring the ups and downs of the two nations.
Absolutely. A constant back and forth, driven by politics, war, culture, economics.
And English ultimately came out on top, not because it was inherently better, but because of power.
Political, economic, military power, first Britain's, then overwhelmingly America's. That's what spreads a language globally, historically speaking.
But maybe that characteristic, we talked about English's ability to absorb so much, especially from French. Maybe that helped too, made it richer, more adaptable.
Could be. It certainly became a very cosmopolitan language, packed with influences. Maybe that flexibility, that huge vocabulary drawn from so many sources, made it useful in more contexts. It borrowed heavily from its rival and became stronger for it.
It leaves you wondering, though, is this struggle ever really over? Language dominance seems so tied to power, and power shifts.
That's the provocative thought, isn't it? We see debates about language use in international bodies, the influence of new rising powers. Language competition probably just changes its form. It doesn't disappear. History suggests it's never permanently settled.
What a journey. From Norman French courts to global English. It really puts the language we use every day into a whole new light, seeing how history shaped it word by word.
It really does. Layers upon layers of history embedded right there in how we speak.
Well, join us next time for another deep dive. We're heading back to the Middle Ages to explore the language of God. We'll look at Latin's role and the fascinating rise of vernacular languages in religious life.
Sounds fascinating. Definitely tune in for that one.